season ending year of our Lord 2020 AFC Northcast, all AFC North team and year-end awards show extravaganza, bonanza, palooza. This is Joey, and I am with you, as always, with Steelers Chad.
Great to be here, Joey. We're all losers together now, and so everything feels better for me. I can start 2021 just like a month late.
And we are joined by OG AFC Northcast host, Justin. Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, boys?
With the hot new Kareem Hunt jersey.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I love Kareem Hunt, man. I love Kareem Hunt. Yeah, I like something that I identified as like a difference between Hunt and Chubb is that Chubb is more elusive, but Hunt is just so physical. Like when he comes to the line, he's just the kind of guy that just really trucks some dudes and just punches them in. I don't know.
He's got some dog in him.
He does. Now that being said, I'm already getting ahead of myself, but I think Nick Chubb's MCL sprain, I don't know if he was ready, but we'll talk about it when we get to it, I guess. But yeah, man, it's good to be back. Got the jersey for Christmas. You can thank my lovely wife for that. And,
thanks, Sam.
I'm glad to find some time. Yeah, glad to find some time to hang out with y'all and talk some football.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, what's everybody drinking tonight?
Well,
I'm drinking out of my commemorative Cleveland Browns cup. That I got for some fundraiser or something. It's rum and ginger ale, so it's like a dark and stormy, but like not so elegant. What I like to call it, a Stormy Daniels.
Oh.
Oh.
Very good. I love it. Timely.
Well, it is officially the off season for everybody, and typically when the off season starts, you head to some sweet destination like Cabo, and so I've got a little Mexican classic. Our friends at the We Got Game podcast know this well, as they are sponsored by Squirt, or as they like to call it, a Square.
That's weird. Stormy Daniels is also sponsored by Squirt.
Hey. So we got some we got some Squirt and tequila.
Wonderful. I love that. I am bringing today a little beer from Casey Brewing out of Glenwood Springs, Colorado. And it's called Funky Blender Cherry. They do wild ales, so they're spontaneously fermented. Real classy, cool guys. And Funky Blender. We're going to blend a team together today. We're going to blend a team together that could beat stupid Tom Brady. They could beat super cool Patrick Mahomes. They could beat anybody because it's going to be the all AFC North team. And it's the cherry on top of our 2020 season of AFC Northcast celebrations for everybody. So I'm very excited. And thank you to my brother for sending me this beer from Colorado. Otherwise, I would never get to have it.
Oh, and we normally do this at the end of episodes, but I'm going to take my victory lap now because there's only one game left, and I am 6 games ahead of second place in the Pick'em this year. So, Bones, suck it. I win.
Who came in first?
Apparently me. Third?
No.
I don't even know if
you
I'm
and Tater
anymore.
tied for third.
Tater.
Oh my God, I'm tied.
Disgraceful.
I'm tied with a guy named Tater. Oh boy, I'm gonna do a lot of soul search.
The amount of like collusion that we have to do to dethrone Tater. Like I think one thing that I learned this year is that at all costs Tater must be stopped.
So Tater won.
I apologize.
We have a fantasy football league that's been going for like 10 or 11 years now, and Tater just won his first championship in like a long time to join me in the 3-time winners club. So Tater is public enemy number 1 at the moment.
Yeah, and you won
the
pick 'em?
No, he didn't. He got third place in the pick.
No, Joey won the pick'em. Joey.
Tater's
Joey was
dick in.
first.
Oh, I thought you said you were second behind.
No.
Just forget me, guys.
Yeah,
Don't
we
worry.
already have.
A little rusty.
That's all right. I was hoping before we start our AFC North team that we would do a little game in honor of the Hall of Fame class being chosen just before the Super Bowl this year. We won't have a podcast before that. Very special player to my heart, could possibly gain entry. So I'd like to throw you 3 players' career accolades, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, and then I'll tell you who those players are and why it matters. Are you ready?
Ready.
Player number one is a guard, was a guard, 7-time Pro Bowler, 5-time first team All-Pro, 2-time second team All-Pro, and he made the 2000s All-Decade team. Sounds pretty good, right? All right, cool. Second player, also a guard, 9-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first team All-Pro, 2-time second team All-Pro, made the 2000s All-Decade team. All right. Also, I don't know, pretty good there.
The 2000s
Third player
team. Okay.
Yep, the 2000 odds, so 2000 through 2010 or whatever,
Yep.
2001. Third player, center, 8-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first team All-Pro, 1-time second team All-Pro, 2000s All-Decade team. Do those sound like Hall of Fame resumes to you guys?
Yeah, I feel like almost any player that makes an all-decade team goes to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Wow,
Okay.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Joey, because that is one of my fast facts about this. So those 3 players in the order that I read them were Steve Hutchinson, who made the Hall of Fame, I believe, 2 years ago, in a finalist group that included the second player, Alan Faneca, who is a finalist this year for the Hall of Fame. And the third player is Kevin Mawai, who made the Hall of Fame over Alan Faneca last year. So they're all pretty close. Alan Faneca has got the most 16 first team All Pros, or second most behind Mawai, but he's got more than Steve Hutchinson. And if you look at the dates, which I did because I'm persnickety, you'll see that Steve Hutchinson's first ever first team All Pro came in 2003. Well, let me tell you a little bit about Alan Faneca. He made the first team All Pro in 2001, 2002, and also 2004 through 2007. So 2003 is missing. Would you like to know why? Of course you don't, but I'm going to tell you anyway. No, he played 9 games at left guard and then, in an act of total selflessness, moved to left tackle. So his All-Pro votes were split between positions, and he still made the second team that year. So that would be taking one away from Hutchinson and adding it to Faneca, almost certainly. A couple other things about Faneca. He missed 2 games in his 13-year career, one of which was for injury, one of which was because the Steelers' seed was already determined in the last week, and so he just got benched for being an old veteran. He had 4 holding penalties in his career.
That's pretty savage.
That's weird, because
Right?
I think Kendall Lang had 4 in a single game.
I have 2 questions, and one leads to the other. Is there a big Alan Faneca doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame contingency?
No, it's just that he keeps not making it, right?
And like, then my second would be I'm not super clear on like the criteria. Like I know in baseball it's an unlimited number of people as long as they get a certain percentage of the vote. Is it the same in the NFL? Do you know?
I think in the NFL it's like 5, but I don't remember the specifics.
I thought there was a cap on it.
But if you want to talk about anti versus pro Hall of Fame contingencies, that brings me to another fast fact. Recently, Alan Faneca has been endorsed for the Hall of Fame by the likes of Mike Munchak, Hall of Fame offensive lineman, and also offensive line coach for the Steelers, although not while Alan Faneca was on the team. Brian Urlacher, Hall of Fame linebacker that was blocked by Alan Faneca, and one Ray Lewis of the Baltimore Ravens legendary Circle of Honor or whatever they've got. And finally,
NFL Hall of Fame.
of course. I mean, that went without saying, sorry. Hall of Famer, of course, Ray Lewis. And finally, last fact. Guess how many players on the 2000s all-decade team are not in the Hall of Fame?
One?
It's more than one. Justin.
I don't know. 3.
Exactly. It's 3. One of those players is Alan Faneca, who should be in the Hall of Fame. One of those players is fullback Lorenzo Neal. Maybe you could make a case for him.
Love. Yeah.
And the final player is Tom Brady. And I think it's because he's ineligible.
Yes. That's funny.
If I'm not mistaken, as a participant in this year's Super Bowl, he is currently ineligible to be in the Hall of Fame. My suspicions are that he will make it despite all of my protestations. So I want it to be known.
Maybe close.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, we all know Alan Faneca deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I think it's been a little bit of Steelers fatigue. There's been a lot of Steelers making the Hall of Fame lately. So I hope that this is his year. And that is the end of my case for Alan Faneca. We love you, Alan. Cheers.
Bravo, Chad. That was an impassioned, hearty speech.
Well, here's the real question. Is this his last year to make it?
No.
Okay, then he's not going to make it.
Damn it. I don't want it to be like that. He's so good. He was like universally regarded as the best guard of his generation.
Kind of like Clay Matthews.
And yet somehow.
Except it's his last year to make it. I highly suspect that Clay Matthews is going to make it this year.
Think
Junior/senior. Yeah, there's just been so much hubbub and drum and hub drum, whatever the fucking word is, about him not making the Hall of Fame the last couple of years, even from people outside of the Browns organization. So this is his last year to be eligible. So I think he'll make it. I mean,
Faneca can make it too. They can both make it.
Yeah. And then Peyton Manning and Calvin Johnson. And
I was about to say
else.
Peyton Manning, Calvin Johnson, Jared Allen. I mean, there's some good dudes.
Jared Allen's borderline for me. Jared Allen's far more borderline than Faneca.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know anything about Bruce Matthews or Clay Matthews or whoever it is.
Clay Matthews Sr. He was a linebacker for the Browns back in the day.
70s, right? We talked about him a little bit last year. He's before my time.
Because he was, again, a finalist and didn't make it. He's been a finalist for, I mean, I'm sure someone will correct me on this, but he's been a finalist for the last, fucking decade and hasn't made it.
Last year seems like it would have been the year to put him in since they had, fucking 40 guys in the Hall of Fame.
Unfortunately, it didn't change, the contemporary players. It was just, extra players, legends. Historically and other things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was my thing. So hopefully we get Clay Matthews in too. I can share the joy of the Hall of Fame with everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Look at this unity already in 2021.
It's good. I'm gonna break it so fast if this game goes the way it's playing.
All right,
I'm ready.
Let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. We're gonna start on the anybody know that reference? No,
but
to
I like
defeat
it
the
already.
Huns. Mulan. Are we talking about Mulan?
Go, Chad. Let's go.
I was gonna say,
am I right?
Shitty wall.
Yeah.
Okay, I was half joking because it didn't seem like the kind of movie you would reference, but I was like,
Wow, Chad. Anyways,
I've seen both the cartoon and the new one.
I have not seen the new one. I've heard mixed reviews on it. We just haven't watched it yet. Anyways,
we can talk about that sometime.
Yeah, Justin's
no, this is important.
Mulan.
We're gonna start on the offensive side of the ball. Um, do we want to just run down starting at quarterback, or do we want to have some
I think
suspense
I thought
and
about this, yeah,
save
and I
like the
think
big
that we should
positions for
save,
last?
yeah, quarterback for last because that's the the shining light of the offense,
Okay.
So
Well, let's start in the
and
trenches
plus I
then.
think
They say that victory starts in the trenches, and this podcast is going to be our victory on the season.
mhm.
Um, so, Chad, we'll start with you, and we'll start in the very middle. Who is your 2020 AFC North All Division Center?
I'm gonna go with the guy that was in the playoffs and didn't cost his team a game, J.C. Treader of the Cleveland Browns.
I second
Mm,
that motion.
man, yeah. So I third that. I'm actually a little bit surprised that you weren't biased, but that's
Wow.
all right. I had like a
Wow.
good joke ready to go, like in the six shooters, just, like ready to fire off. But I guess you robbed me of that pleasure. So
I can
moving
tell you guys if you want. I don't have any stats. Does anyone have any stats?
Nope.
Not off the top of my head. No.
Nope.
Again, when I made the list, I did have a bunch of
Lack
shit.
of
All right.
game ruining snaps in big spots was my stat.
Well, if you want to hear about a good play, and I have a few plays for one potential future nominee, I have a play that Treader, along with a few other Browns offensive linemen, did some good work in when the Browns played Baltimore in Week 14, which was maybe one of the best games of the season in its entirety so far. I called it the Teller, not Treader, the Teller pull. It looked to me like a zone blocking scheme. Read that with a grain of salt. This is not my expertise. So left
Joe
guard
Thomas
Teller,
begs to differ. I'm just kidding.
yeah, he pulls to the right on this play and blasts Queen as Queen enters the backfield. Remember that because Teller could be a nominee soon. The right tackle, Conklin, lets Judon run up the edge, if you'll try and visualize this with me, and he just takes Judon out of the play. He doesn't pancake him or anything, but he just removes him. Treader turns leftwise, and he drives Wolf so far that David Njoku, who's pulling from left to right, actually doesn't know which hole to lead Nick Chubb through. So as he hesitates, he actually cuts Chubb off from going to the right. And so Chubb stops. And then Njoku decides to go left, where there's a hole that's literally 7 yards wide because Treader has driven Wolf into the sidelines, basically out of the camera shot. It was such, in a center, he snapped the ball first, right? He snapped and then gained the leverage to drive the defensive lineman all the way out. Chubb eventually works to the right. Queen has freed himself up, but Chubb drags a bunch of people for like 13 yards. It's a really great play. A bunch of Browns offensive linemen did really well. I thought it was a great example of Treader being able to do his job, which is to get the ball to the quarterback safely and also still have force and drive in the running game, which is one of the reasons the Browns running game was so good this year.
Alrighty, so we got a clean sweep for old JC Treader.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
NFLPA president.
Well, let's move to the gentleman that will be neighboring old JC Treader on the All Pro team. Justin, why don't you start us off with your offensive guards?
Both of them.
Yeah, hit us with both of them.
All right. So a common theme here. I actually picked Batonio and Teller, both of them. So Teller actually got snubbed for the Pro Bowl, in my opinion. Now, he did miss a couple of games because he had some injuries that he was working through. But, I mean, throughout the entire season, he was basically being called the best right guard of, the entire league. But he did get snubbed. I forget who ended up winning out over him, but he was, like I said, missing for 5 games, I want to say. So I think that had to do with that. So, but that's those are my picks.
Chad? Any dissension?
Justin, let me ask you this quickly. Wasn't Teller the left guard? Or was he the right guard?
He was the right guard, and
He's the right
Batonio
guard.
was the left guard.
Okay, I had it written right in this. I agree with Justin. I put down Wyatt Teller and Joel Bitonio as the starting guards on this team. I was just looking back at my plays and I got confused because I think I wrote down the wrong guard on one of the plays. But anyway, yeah, they're both really good. They drive defensive linemen crazy by overpowering them. They have good enough feet that once they get to the second level, they get on linebackers, and once their hands are on linebackers, it's over. Um, they're both really, really good. I think the Browns run a little more to the right than the left. Um, but Wyatt Teller is an excellent puller, so they can really use both of the guards running to either side. They're excellent, really, really excellent.
I also like the fact that Teller was like this unknown that kind of just came out of nowhere. I'm always a fan of the big kind of like underdog story, if you will. So that
Mm-hmm.
also kind of pulls at me a little bit too.
Yeah,
He went from being like a practice squad Bills guard to, basically every single game he was getting announced. So
I guess we're all just going to roundly disrespect Bradley Bozeman
absolutely.
yeah,
because I
yeah.
also picked Joel Bitonio and JC and Wyatt Teller.
For the
So
record, we've disrespected two Steelers Pro Bowlers as well, David DeCastro and Marquise Pouncey. Made the
well, I mean,
NFL
we've
Pro
already
Bowl
discussed our
situation in the
thoughts on the
AFC.
Marcus Pouncey Pro Bowl
That's
nomination.
weird.
So.
I thought he was a long snapper.
Hey-o.
Hey, I got to use it. I got to use it.
The Steelers are all about positional versatility, Justin. Okay.
There you go. Hey, without getting too much off topic, so are the Browns, man. The number of positions that were filled on the spot at game day in the offensive line for the Browns and just performed astronomically it made me feel pretty good.
Secondary
anyways.
too.
Yeah, they did have a lot of injuries, secondary and offensive line that they did admirably with.
All right.
Yeah,
And,
man, we're all agreeing.
So we'll move on to the cornerstones of the offensive line, the big money guys, the tackles. I will start this one off. I'm going to go with one that I think is obvious, Jack Conklin. More Browns offensive line love. I think there's no debating that the Browns had the best offensive line in the division this past year, so none of this should really be a surprise as far as a unit goes. And I am going to put Orlando Brown Jr. on my all-division team for his versatility and stepping up in the face of adversity. So he started the year as the right tackle about halfway through the season. Ronnie Stanley goes down, and he just moves on over to left tackle. And after I made this selection, it has become a sore spot because Orlando Brown is looking forward to his contract negotiations, and he has tweeted out that he is a left tackle. And so that's going to be a whole bunch of fun for Eric DaCosta and the Ravens.
Sounds like he's a real team player.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Justin?
So I actually had the same. So if you're gonna go for a whole unit, obviously, like Joey said, the Browns. I think because I'm the resident Browns expert, heavily in quotations. I'm impressed. I think Jedrick Wills overall did pretty good this year, but he's not at the pro level as that Orlando Brown was this year.
Yeah.
Really, I
so
think it would've been a third,
basically, yeah. I think that what we all did here in order to close out our research time frames, because we're professionals with families and other obligations and responsibilities, is that we didn't look at the Bengals at all, and that was the smart play here.
You mean Bengals offensive line?
That's right.
We
No,
overlooked something.
negative. So we were able to ignore that entirely. And then you start to think, okay, so you've got Orlando Brown Jr., you've got Jedrick Wills, and you've got Alejandro Villanueva, who play left tackle. And Jedrick Wills, I thought he was totally respectable, and he looks like he's going to be really good. But if you watch the Browns games closely, he opened games often with like early penalties. He definitely gave up sacks. I mean, not a lot, but it happened. So that hurt him. And Alejandro Villanueva, it didn't. I don't think statistically he gave up a sack, but it's hard in 1.2 seconds. So I think most of the credit that he gets statistically is actually credit that goes elsewhere. So to me, that leaves Orlando Brown, and I think Joey made the case. He left his position to play a difficult one. Moving from right to left tackle is hard. You change your body mechanics. It's not an easy thing to do. Ask Jedrick Wills. So congratulations to the only Raven who's just totally going to get hazed on that offensive line.
Yeah,
new guy,
really put his fucking
new
foot
kid,
in his mouth.
New kid on the block, Orlando
And once
Brown.
once he hears about this, his agent's going to be salivating.
Yeah, this is a prestigious award, and the trophies are all in the mail for the listeners that we have that make the team today.
Justin, you're moving around like a crackhead. Stay in one spot.
I'm sorry.
Buddy.
Yeah,
okay.
I have a whole new setup, and I have not had to use my webcam a whole lot in this new setup, so
It's okay.
I will just let it be.
You're just exercising your freedom. You know, it's all right. It's all right.
Yep. I don't have to deal with that shit. Now it's Joey's problem.
Yeah. All right. Continuing to move out, we will get to the skill position / offensive line hybrid position, the tight end.
I guess if we're going around, this is my turn to nominate first.
Yeah, go ahead and nominate an all-division tight end.
That's lame. I was hoping to get a position of more, juiciness, but I think the clear-cut answer here is Mark Andrews. I think that the Steelers got some pretty significant statistical contributions from the tight end position, but if you look more than superficially at that, there's pretty large gaps in their game, particularly in the run blocking and the pass dropping department. I think the Browns got incredible contributions from their tight ends, but it was more as a collective unit than one individual.
Yeah.
And I think the Bengals, oh man, I actually like the guy on the Bengals, but he got hurt like 4 games into the year that was starting. Oh, what's that guy's name? He was behind Eifert last year. He's got a cool name. He's got a TV name.
Uzama?
No.
Yeah, yep. CJ Uzama. I actually thought that he displayed some really nice chemistry with Joe Burrow early in the year, and I like him. But it's Mark Andrews. He's by far and away the best tight end statistically, and just watching the games, he impacts the game in a bigger way.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. Mark Andrews, when you're talking from like a skill position kind of a thing, obviously I think takes the cake. I have neither the patience nor the time to dedicate to figure out who the best blocking tight end of the AFC North was, but Mark Andrews obviously is gonna fill that spot as a skill position. Like you said, the Browns did pretty good at tight end, but they have like 6 of them on the roster, so it's kind of difficult to pick one. You could say that Austin Hooper was the best of the 6 at like a skill position kind of a thing, and he also obviously blocks pretty well. But for a single person that was able to fulfill that spot, I think Mark Andrews kind of did the best job.
I agree. He had more catches and touchdowns on less targets than Droptimus Prime, Mr. Ebron. And
I was actually talking about Nick Berkeley, sorry.
Great statistic, Joey. Great statistic. I'm gonna
thank you.
Shove that up your ass as soon as possible.
And I mean, that's really the difference. The Browns spread it around too much, and he just had the most production. So he led the Ravens in catches this year.
Yeah, he probably did last year and the year before too. So
he and Hollywood actually tied. He tied for the lead in catches this year.
Man, if only Hollywood could get open, it would be his.
Oh, well, let's talk about the wide receiver position.
All right.
We're going to have 2 all-division wide receivers. Justin, why don't you hit us with your nominations?
These might be hot takes.
Okay.
Chad?
We're doing So we're doing 2 wide receivers, and then there'll be a flex. Is that the understanding?
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just didn't do that, but that's fine. That's
That's
totally
fine.
fine.
If you did 3 wide
I'm ready.
receivers, then
I just
go
looked at
flex into a wide receiver.
the group message about
Exactly.
what we talked about, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
it.
That's fine. I'm sure
So-
that that's great, and I love it.
I
Justin,
picked 2 wide receivers, and these may be hot takes. All right, be ready for them. But I picked Jarvis Landry and
Shocker.
drumroll Tyler Boyd. Actually, I think Tyler Boyd had an absolutely standout year. Even so, first off, having Joe Burrow, who was a rookie, which I think actually is worth noting that he actually did a pretty good performance in his rookie season as far as what he was able to do in those few games he was able to play. But even with a bunch of backup jobbers, he still was able to put up an immense amount of yards, touchdowns, catches, right? So I think Tyler Boyd is growing into that offense, even opposite of A.J. Green. I don't think it's anymore just as simple as saying like, oh, well, A.J. Green gets all the coverage and Tyler Boyd reaps the benefit. I think that he's really actually come into his own. I think there's a couple players that you'll probably like dispute with that, but I don't remember what they are, but I had stats and facts to back it up at the time. But there you go.
Chad?
my 2 starting outside receivers, because I will be suggesting a slot receiver in the flex position later,
I know it's so weird, but sorry, go ahead.
are Jarvis Landry and T. Higgins. And I'll make the supporting argument to Justin for Jarvis Landry real quick here. He was 4th in the AFC North in receptions, so he was right up there near the top. He was 3rd in catch percentage, and he doesn't only catch the ball at the line of scrimmage. He catches the ball in difficult scenarios over the middle and at the sideline. He was 3rd in first downs, and he only had 1 interception on all of his targets. So he protected the ball as well as catching it. And he was only behind Higgins in the quarterback's rating when targeting him at 101.9 in the AFC North. So he was 2nd in that. I think Jarvis Landry is the most entertaining wide receiver to watch in the AFC North. He is a player that I was going to lean on Justin for, that I didn't get to go over some of his tape. But if I remember correctly, some like week 3 or 4, we described like a reverse play that got ran to him where Baker caught a pass and then threw it back across the field for like a 4-yard gain. And it was like the most fun 4 yards I ever saw. That ended up to Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry has expertise in the pretend to go out of bounds, but then stay on the sideline and run 10 more yards. He did that at least once every other game this year. He blocks with pizzazz. He's emotional. He's fun, and he is definitely the guy. Joey, I'll lead it to you because it seemed like you were maybe also going to make a case for T. Higgins, so I'll let you lead on that.
Yeah. So I also picked Jarvis and T. Higgins. I thought about getting Juju in here, just from a catch volume standpoint, pretty much, because like his yards per catch wasn't great. I think Deontay Johnson was worth a mention in this conversation because he had an outstanding year as far as touchdowns and yards go. But yeah, I mean, T. Higgins. So down the stretch, T. Higgins, like the last month of the season, became the Bengals' #1 receiver, like in targets and catches. So Tyler Boyd, I think, is great, and I think Tyler Boyd's utility is more as that #2 style receiver, and T. Higgins is going to allow them going forward to just be like AJ who, and he's fantastic. So it looks like by our counts, Jarvis and T. Higgins are the
Yeah, and
AFC North receivers.
I will say this one thing. When I was doing my astute level of research, the breaker for me was the catch percentage. So obviously, I didn't watch a ton of Bengals games this year because the Bengals games, trust me, as entertaining as they were, I just had to pass them up for watching the Browns this year. But the difference is that the difference between, and I just looked it up again just to make sure that I was on the right path. But in receiving, T. Higgins had 2 more receptions than Tyler Boyd, but Tyler Boyd had a whole 10% higher catch percentage. So to me, that was significant enough to nominate him over T. Higgins. But hey, I understand. I lose out on that one.
It's a reasonable case, and one that I think makes Tyler Boyd a worthy contender for the slot receiver position on this team. T. Higgins also, of all the people we're talking about, had the highest yards per catch and yards per target, and also only had 1 interception on his targets, which is pretty impressive considering the QBs he was working with really all year since Joe Burrow was a rookie. But then after that, and 103.5 rating on his targets, which again, factoring in the QBs throwing him the ball, he was elevating the play of the quarterbacks, in my opinion. But Tyler Boyd is definitely an excellent player.
Very well said. All right, moving on to running back. I will get us started off here. I think the very, very, very easy answer is Nick Chubb. It's pretty obvious. He rushed for the most yards in the division. He was like 3rd in the AFC. Even with the injury and splitting time with a very, very capable, wouldn't even really call him a backup in Kareem Hunt. He led the division in rushing touchdowns, and the only players that had more yards per carry than him were Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins. Just want to throw that out there.
2 totally valid running back possible selections for this team.
I think so.
What do you think, Justin? Is Nick Chubb the guy, or should it be another guy that maybe you're wearing a for him?
No, I think it's relatively unanimous at this point. As much as I would love to make a case for Kareem Hunt based on the performance, yards, touchdowns, unfortunately, and it's so tough to say. It really is, because I mean no disrespect to my boy Kareem Hunt, but he had to play second fiddle to Nick Chubb this year, and you know he's got another contract for I think another 2 years, and he probably will continue to, but it feels so wrong saying it because it feels disrespectful, but I swear it is not. But yeah, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, it's obvious.
Is it?
Please.
It is
I
so
swear, if you nominate James Conner, I'm just going to
No,
completely
I knew James
sign
Conner
out.
wasn't happening.
James Conner was my easy choice for second team, which we're not going to go into. There's no time. But I think we all agree on that. Too bad there's no time. No, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb was the player that when I watched tape to find some highlight plays, I had the easiest time finding too many of them. And I only watched to look for these plays. I watched the week 14 game versus Baltimore. So I picked a game where he did well. But he was playing against a really good team. He ran 17 times for 82 yards in that game. So it wasn't like it was easy. I didn't pick the games against Jacksonville where he ran wild or anything like that. So I've got a bunch of plays. I'm going to go by one with you guys because I think you'll remember some things that he did a lot this year from this one play. It was his first touchdown that game. And I think it was an 11-yard touchdown run. So the whole offensive line of the Browns just crashes to the left, or the Ravens right if you're Joey. And Bitonio, right guard, AFC all-team Bitonio, he makes a quick push on the nose tackle and quickly gets to the second level and seals. I don't know which Ravens linebacker, but they were playing a bunch of jokers. Malik Harrison, who didn't get tons of time later, and I don't know, they're messing around. And the other key block was the right tackle, Conklin, actually did a cut block on Wolf. and he was the last lineman going to the left. So he kind of sealed it. And Nick Chubb did what Nick Chubb did a bunch of times this year. He followed the line initially and then saw an opening and cut back behind the whole play. And he just charged right through the back side. I think he scored 3 or 4 touchdowns doing this year. And then he did what he does best, which is run over people in the secondary. He's never been tackled by one secondary player. And in this case, it was Chuck Clark, who got to bear the brunt of it. And if you watch this game, and in every play that I found, and for the record, the Ravens safeties are physical and they tackle well. So when I say that it takes 2 of them to tackle Nick Chubb, it's not because they're daisies. It's because Nick Chubb runs people over when he gets to the secondary. He's just too strong to be tackled by those players. So I thought that play really stood out to me as a classic Nick Chubb vision plus speed plus power, finishing his run. And yeah, all AFC North probably for years to come if he wants it.
Does anybody have handy the 20-plus yard runs pulled up anywhere? No.
I have some stuff, but not 20-plus yards.
How all the whatever explosive run metrics you want to use, like pretty much guarantee it's like Henry and Chubb lead the league. Like every time you turn around, the guy's ripping off 20-yard runs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, we talked about it throughout the year. It was basically you were just waiting for it to happen every game. He basically created a drive on one explosive run or 2 when he would get going in a row. Yeah, great player.
Yeah, and the dynamic between the 2 of them, something that I kind of talked about a little bit in the beginning, and I really stand by, is that Chubb just seems to be so much more elusive, whereas Hunt tends to be a little bit more physical. Not to say that Nick Chubb is not physical, but he tends to kind of just take guys on, north-south, kind of head-on kind of a guy. And whereas Nick Chubb, his elusiveness, obviously, gets him more yards. So.
All right, and we will move to our flex position. I know this is going to be an interesting one because it's up for kind of translation and how you see it. I don't remember really where I let off on running back. So Chad, why don't you start us off in the flex? I know you see it you're using it as a slot wide receiver position.
Well, I remember now that I'm the one that originally suggested flex, but when I was building the team, I knew that we were playing a nickel defense, so I just put a receiver in since we were playing 3 corners. That's just how my brain was working when I was doing this. So to me, borderline starting AFC North wide receiver, and I moved him to the slot position because of the 3 I chose. He was the one that made the most sense in the slot. It's Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm going to anticipate. I know he caught a lot of very short passes this year. He did what was asked of him by his offensive coordinator and their offensive scheme. So here's a few things that Juju Smith-Schuster did well. He led the AFC North in receptions. So his team depended on him, and he made it. He was first in catch percentage in the AFC North, so higher than one Tyler Boyd. He was second in first downs to T. Higgins. He was second in TDs to Chase Claypool, so he was counted on in the red zone. And he had a drop rate of 2.3%, which is basically half of Landry or Higgins. And his QB rate on targets was 99.4, which was higher than Tyler Boyd, but a little bit behind Landry and Higgins. So he caught a lot of short passes, but he also was really dependable when they let him stretch the field. And if you guys end up agreeing that he deserves to be on this team, I have a week 16 couple of highlights against the Colts when they came back and won. Just to celebrate his full repertoire, he caught a long touchdown and he did some of the things that he does best.
Justin?
Joe, why don't you go next?
Okay.
Well, I concede my time.
I'm going to steal your thunder. And I think that because we called this a flex position, it kind of just lends itself to like what style of football you like are accustomed to or want to run. And I put Kareem Hunt in this spot. I think right now he's the second best running back in the division, and he's a fantastic pass catcher. So his versatility, even against a corner, we saw on that sick Monday Night Football game him abuse in space Marlon Humphrey out on the edge by himself. And I just like the way that he plays, and it helps me keep a Steeler off the all division team, and that's always a plus.
Absolutely.
I think
Yes,
Juju
we're
is a
gonna take
worthy.
this down.
I do think Juju is a worthy adversary. I
So-
mentioned him in the wide receiver discussion.
It's almost like Steelers Chad has more know-how and capability than Mike Tomlin does, putting Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot. But anyways, so Kareem Hunt, yeah, that's who I picked. I mean, just all around, when you talk about the versatility of something like a slot position, you want somebody that's going to be able to do it all, right? So just real quick, yards from scrimmage, Juju Smith-Schuster, 831. Kareem Hunt, 1149. That's like hundreds, plural, of yards more, right? I don't know what else to tell you. So, yeah, man, look, Kareem Hunt, he's my guy. He's a hometown guy, and I always love those kinds of stories too. So, there you go. So here's my question, actually, for Chad. So what's your thoughts of Juju kind of lining up on the outside instead of being a slot, where he not only produced better but seems to be more at home?
He played in the slot is the answer. So he played on that. He was a starting wide receiver for the Steelers. So in 2 wide receiver sets, he played on the outside. But when they had more than 2, he often played out of the slot. Or if it was a bunch, he like they moved him around. And so I don't know what percentage of plays he was in the slot, but when they were in like a 3 wide receiver offense, he was basically always in the slot. He just seemed to be on the outside, because when they were in 4 wide receiver sets, he might be in the bunch, and who knows what anyone's doing in the bunch. No one's the slot really, right? And then when they were in 2 wide receiver sets, he was also on the field. So that's to me why Juju was the player to put on this team, as opposed to Deontay, who led the league in drops by like double, or Chase Claypool, who led the AFC North in touchdowns, but he wasn't depended on as much in critical positions.
Yeah.
When the Steelers were struggling with drops and couldn't make things happen, Juju was the one that was getting it done. Like, I can't remember what week it was when they came back. They were having a bunch of drops, but he had a crossing route in the end zone, and Ben Roethlisberger threw it behind him into where the defender was trailing, and he pulled it back away from the defender and made a tough catch. Like, he just did those kind of plays when the other guys weren't getting it done. I think basically his lack of yards and lack of yards per target was all just the Steelers trying to not be predictable, and it really just it shouldn't be an indictment on his game. But I will accept democracy and just say you guys are wrong. Sometimes the people pick wrong. I can't think of an example for the country, but I know that sometimes the people pick wrong. I know it happens. I don't have an example off the top of my head from recent history. I know if I rack my brain, I can think of it.
I will say that Chase Claypool and Juju were my 1B and 1C. So
A lot of good talent at those positions in the AFC North this
a
year.
flex position,
sure.
at least.
Alrighty, now for the crown jewel of an all division offense. Justin, who
This is gonna
is
be so
your
great.
all
Why did I
AFC
have to
North
go
quarterback?
I actually kind of struggled back and forth with this, and I'm actually still struggling back and forth with this. And I was hoping that you guys could convince me by going first,
I'll
But
go. I'll go.
I as much as everyone in Cleveland is gonna absolutely hate me for it, I think I just have to pick Ben Roethlisberger. Like he's one of the and as much as I hate to admit it, man, like he over the number of passes, the number of yards, the number of touchdowns, the number of situations that he's put in, I mean, he continues to produce. Now
Holy
we can
shit,
talk
Justin.
about the wild card game all you want, right? Because I loved watching that game more than anybody, or as much as anybody else in Cleveland. But if we're talking over the whole 16 game regular season, it's so tough, man. It's a complete coin flip for me. You have the argument that Baker has the advantage of having both of those running backs as a massive threat by comparison to Ben, who, let's be honest, James Conner is not a massive threat by any fucking means, right? So when you're talking about somebody, a quarterback, whose responsibility it is to pass the football, it just is what it is, all right?
Sing it, sister.
What's the quarterback's
Sing it,
responsibility?
To drive the football down the field. How about that?
Okay. Oh, okay. Let's talk about that then. Let's talk about moving the football, and let's talk about scoring points. The quarterback that led the offense in the AFC North that moved the football the most, combined with scoring the most points, was Lamar Jackson.
Oh, did you know, Joey?
I'll just add, Justin, that Baker, the Browns threw for more yards a game than the Steelers did. Just want to put that out there. Ben had more touchdowns, but the Browns' offensive passing game was more yards per game than the Steelers.
I want to say that's not true, but give me a second. My computer's really slow today.
Okay. Either way, it's Lamar. It's Lamar. He quarterbacked the best offense in the league with a bunch of backup offensive linemen and two centers that can't snap the ball. I'll see Pittsburgh's one center who can't snap the ball, and I'll raise you two centers who can't snap the ball.
Dude, Hassenauer couldn't snap the ball. He played.
He threw for the same number of touchdowns as Baker Mayfield and was also the second 1,000-yard rusher in the division behind Nick Chubb. There was only two, and Lamar Jackson was one of them. Lamar Jackson is the all AFC North quarterback.
It appears that I have to break this tie. And I think that I have at least hinted earlier in this conversation that I am not a pure homer. So I took this decision seriously. And I actually thought for a reasonable amount of time about four players. I thought about Joe Burrow, extrapolating his per game statistics out. He was pretty darn phenomenal. I think really in terms of passing statistics per game, he would have led the division. I considered Baker Mayfield, who I thought closed the season out playing some of his best football and in some game plans in which they really featured him, even though their running game was the core of their offense. I considered Ben Roethlisberger, who was the entirety of the Pittsburgh offense. And when he played really well early in the year, especially, he was in the MVP conversation, although at the very back of it. And when he played poorly, the team looked tragic and almost unwatchable at times. And I considered Lamar, who is by far the flashiest, glitziest player, and who is obvious from a pure talent and potential explosive play standpoint, because he seems to represent the future of the NFL. And when I really looked at the statistics, I decided on Ben Roethlisberger, and I'm going to tell you why. He led the AFC North in completion percentage, which on its own is not a very valuable statistic because a lot of the throws were short. They were short, but he was moving the ball. he had the most TDs, only tying Lamar if you factor in his rushing touchdowns.
Mhm.
So even with the rushing touchdowns, Ben Roethlisberger was, and Joey likes to talk about driving down the field and scoring points. Ben Roethlisberger scored as many points as Lamar. He had the lowest sack percentage in the division by a mile. And Lamar specializes in never getting tackled. So I would have assumed it would have been Lamar because I just assumed he was never sacked based on what Joey says. But it turns out it was Ben. And we already talked about it. It wasn't because of the Steelers' offensive line. It was because he did what he had to do, which is get rid of the ball pretty quickly when they spread the ball out. And he threw the ball a ton. He had the most game-winning drives. And it's not like the Ravens were never losing because they lost 5 games. And as Joey loves to preach, they had the highest point differential in the NFL. So if they lost 5 with that, they were all close losses. They could have won. Lamar had opportunities. And he had the most yards, even if you factor in Lamar's rushing yards. So if you're going to talk about driving down the field and scoring points, Ben Roethlisberger just did it this year more prolifically. I will never blame anyone that says that he's not as good and that they would rather have Lamar. Fine, but
right.
Ben
This
Roethlisberger,
is not a future discussion. This is
if you take the totality of his play, which included the first 11-0 start in franchise history, he was the best. And it sucks that his season ended so poorly for me, and you guys get to love that.
So I wanted to point out, I'm so glad you said Lamar Jackson because for passing at least, there except for yards, there is one stat that Lamar Jackson beats Baker Mayfield at, and one stat he beats Ben Roethlisberger at. Let's start with Baker Mayfield. What one stat do you believe he beat Baker Mayfield at? Just a guess.
Yards
Lamar?
per attempt.
Actually, I don't think he did.
It's just a guess.
Actually, he did beat Baker by 0.1.
So two stats that he beat Baker in? Because you didn't
No,
look at
I'm
that
sorry.
one.
I meant the other way around. The Stormy Daniels is getting to me. No, it was the other way around. But the stat that he beat Baker Mayfield at is yards sacked by 2 yards. This elusive running quarterback beat Baker Mayfield by 2 yards on sacks.
That's because his center snapped the ball fucking 30 yards back in the backfield. What are you talking about?
7.2 to Baker's 5.1 for sack percentage. Okay.
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger.
Mobile quarterbacks regularly have a higher sack percentage than non-mobile quarterbacks.
Okay, so I guess it's okay to just lose.
That's normal. Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson.
Normal stat. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we'll just lose yards on plays at a higher rate.
Let's talk about let's talk about touchdown percentage. What percentage of Baker Mayfield's passes were touchdowns? Because Lamar and Baker had the same number of touchdown passes, and I'm guessing Baker threw the ball a lot more than Lamar did.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, a touchdown percentage was another one. I apologize. That is correct.
I could just
apologize, Justin. Don't apologize, Justin. Baker Mayfield had a heck of a year, and
yeah. I didn't come in here and thrash Baker Mayfield. I don't know what this is. You fucking voted for Ben Roethlisberger.
Thrash Lamar Jackson.
You're going to try.
Man. He beat Baker Mayfield on total yards by 43 yards. Total. That's 43 yards.
Okay. So he moved his offense for more yards than Baker did this year. That's a win for Lamar.
That's a pretty one-dimensional way to put it when you account for the fact that Baker passed for
Baker's the one who's one-dimensional.
More than him.
You just have this antiquated view of what a quarterback is, just a passer. Welcome to the fucking 21st century, Justin. Quarterbacks can run
welcome to 2020. Yeah, when the years of Michael Vick, Donovan McNabb, Steve McNair, right?
All the 21st century.
We've never seen
welcome
someone
to the 21st century.
Run the football before.
All those guys played after 2000. That's the 21st century.
Name me a dual threat Super Bowl winning quarterback. I'll wait.
Okay. Name me a Super Bowl winning quarterback from Oklahoma. I'll wait.
Oh, yours is like so much more niched than mine.
No, it's not.
Dual
I bet
threat.
there's been more pro quarterbacks from Oklahoma than quarterbacks you call dual threat.
Well,
Patrick
Ben
Mahomes is a
Roethlisberger.
dual
I
threat.
did
He
not-
just won the last Super Bowl. Russell Wilson's a dual threat. He's been to two
So-
and won one.
Russell Wilson is the only one I was prepared for you to say. First off, Patrick Mahomes is not a dual threat quarterback. The guy is a primary passing quarterback.
What does dual threat mean? Well, you're just moving the goalposts. You're using a totally subjective. Dual threat is whatever you decide it is. Dual threat used to
Whatever
be.
I decided.
Dual threat used to just mean a guy that Cordell Stewart was dual threat. Like, it doesn't make him a prolific runner. It just means he can run. Ryan Tannehill's a dual threat quarterback.
I think
I'm just
Patrick
saying-
Mahomes is a dual threat quarterback.
Thank
For the
you, Chad.
record,
I'm just saying that
I also-
that the Ravens' passing offense was 29th.
Right. And
Yeah,
the
it
rush
wasn't
offense
good. And
was
Joey
number
kn-
one because of Lamar Jackson,
Right.
who was their leading rusher.
yeah, he's good. And that's why, Joey, and that's why Lamar deserved to be in the conversation. I'm glad you chose
you.
him because
Thank you.
he deserved to have a case made because he's a really special player. I also think that if you're going to make the case for like an MTV award of like the most fun player to watch in the division, it's Lamar, right?
Yeah.
Like every time he has the ball, like you complained to Justin that he lost in sack yards because the ball got thrown 30 feet behind him over his head. But you neglected to mention that earlier in that game, the same thing happened and he managed to get
got
out of it.
off.
So
Yeah.
it's like he could have lost by 54 yards instead of 4 if he wasn't so special that way, right? He's a super fun player to watch. I really, really like watching him. I only root for him to do poorly because it allows me to laugh at you on this podcast. And I was really, I was honestly surprised that I ended up choosing Ben. I really was. I mean that. I obviously
I was
love
too.
picking Steelers.
For the record.
I love
want me
picking
to-
Steelers.
I'll
But
show you something. I chose Ben initially, and then I went back and I changed it to Lamar. Not during the podcast, but when I was picking my team. So
now that you guys are done yelling at each other, can I tell you about 2 really nice plays in which Ben didn't throw behind the line of scrimmage or a slant route for 2 yards that really
Please.
exemplified his ability?
if you could find two,
I could, and I found them in the one game that I chose, which was his 34 for 49, 341 yard, 3 TD, 0 interception performance against the Colts in Week 16. And I chose 2 of his touchdown passes. And the first one was his 39-yard touchdown to Deontay Johnson. So the thing that was really cool about this play was, one, the offensive line did its job. So he had a clean pocket. Older quarterbacks need clean pockets to step into their throws. They've been talking about this with Tom Brady a lot. Ben Roethlisberger is now also a part of that equation. He holds the shallow safety with his eyes by looking into the middle of the field. And then he throws the ball out to the right before Deontay actually gets past the defensive back. So that's old veteran quarterback stuff, right? He leads the receiver before they've even broken open. That's what you got to do in the NFL instead of college. And it was a 39-yard touchdown. It went 50 yards in the air. This is a guy coming off of surgery. They didn't know how strong his arm was going to be. So a nice 50-yard pass. So he can throw it deep, still got the strength. The second was the touchdown that would end up winning the game against the Colts. They were down 24-21. It was a fourth quarter. Ben used probably the most famous move he does now in terms of commentating, the pump fake. He pump faked to the left to again hold the shallow safety in the middle, and Juju came from the right side. Actually, I don't remember if he was in the slot, so I won't say that. I don't remember, but he started on the right, and he came across to the middle on a post, and Ben Roethlisberger threw it over that shallow safety's head and led Juju away from the trailing coverage for a really nice 25-yard touchdown. So he can still throw a nice ball when he's given time and when he, isn't afraid of being hit, basically. So hopefully he has a little bit left in him next year, because it looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers for at least one more turn around the rodeo.
The whole starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers thing is a whole different conversation. Let alone the backup for a position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's another conversation as well. I don't know what the hell they've been doing other than saying like, Ben, please stay another year. That's like seems to be their mantra going forward. But yeah, I don't know. I will just close my case by saying that I staunchly disagree with Joey, and think that time will be on my side.
Yeah, it's 2-1, and Ben Roethlisberger is the quarterback of the All AFC North team, which, to quote a wise man that leads this podcast named Joey, is the crown jewel. So that is a pretty big win for the Steelers, getting that crown jewel. Thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who played a role in that award.
Only Steeler on the All AFC North offense.
Well, there can only be one crown jewel, so.
Look, I knew I shot myself in the foot when I said drive the football down the field instead of throw the football down.
Yeah, you really screwed yourself there.
I screwed myself, yeah.
Let's roll on to the defensive side of the ball. We will start once again in the trenches where games are won and lost. And we will start with the big boys. Interior defensive linemen. I'll kick this one off since it's my turn in the rotation. I think the first one is a no-brainer. He's an all-pro. His name's Cam Hayward, and he's phenomenal. And for the second one, I picked the big boy, last year's all-pro, Calais Campbell. His statistics don't jump off the page at you, but he affects games greatly. He missed a game earlier in the season against the Tennessee Titans, in which the Ravens allowed like 140 rush yards to Derrick Henry. Like 100 of them were after halftime. Calais Campbell played in the playoff game where they allowed like 40 yards on like 18 carries to your supposed rushing champ king, Derrick Henry. So, Matt Stafford got traded to the Rams for Jared Goff and picks. That came from Panda Squad Boy on Twitch. So, breaking news on the AFC Northcast. Stafford to the Rams and Sean McVay for Jared Goff and picks.
I will say that I didn't see that coming, but I think that's a much better spot for him than the 49ers, which has been touted all week. Everybody talking about the 49ers and Matt Stafford. It's like, in my opinion, like the 49ers don't have the wide receiver weapons that Matt Stafford needs. Like, he's a slinger, man. Like, put him somewhere where Slinger's going to sling, right? And I think that actually at the Rams, I didn't even speculate that. And damn, that's a pretty good pick or spot for him.
That's wild.
Yeah.
All right,
Jared Goff, what do you have to say? Yeah, no kidding.
All right. Cam Hayward and Calais Campbell. Chad, who are your votes for?
Cam Hayward was also one of my choices. His statistics also weren't way off the charts this year, but he did have 54 tackles, 7 for a loss, 4 sacks, and 1 interception. His missed tackle rate was only 8.5%, and if you're below 10, that means you're really good at tackling. So he's pretty clear cut. If you watch a lot of football, I'll just, because he's now officially going to make it with 2 votes. His week 16 against Indianapolis was bonkers. He's matched up against Quentin Nelson a lot. I've talked a lot about how last year he bull rushed Quentin Nelson 10 yards back into Jacoby Brissett, dislocating his kneecap when Quentin Nelson fell on him. All of that was awesome except for the injury. He had 2 super great plays against Quentin Nelson in this game. He's got to move. He's super strong. He's got what I like to call dad strength. He doesn't drink aminos like Joey. And go to weightlifting competitions, he's just got power. He's probably slinging hay bales or something with James Washington. So he does this move where he locks his single arm into your chest, and then he just leans and he with one arm just moves people back. He's just a very powerful guy. So his tackle for a loss, this was a game, but he fended off Quentin Nelson with one arm and leaned on him, and then he worked his way down the line of scrimmage, and then he he broke off that block and tackled Jonathan Taylor, and it was just a great example of that move. It's just super strong. And his second example is just intangibles. He's just the guy that is more than flash, even though he's an all-pro. And the sack that he got on that game was all effort. He initially pushed Quentin Nelson back on a nice bull rush, but he lost his leverage because he jumped to try and get a pass defensed. And then, of course, a beast like Quentin Nelson's going to get you knocked back. But Rivers rolled out of the pocket to the right, and Cam Hayward's the one that chased him down for the sack, running all the way across the field. So he's got a motor. He's got high effort. He plays like he's not a star player. So I agree. My second guy is Stephon Tuitt. He's the guy with all the sacks and the stats. He's 10 sacks, 45 tackles, 11 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. He didn't miss any games. He does everything that Calais Campbell does. He's just not the name, and he doesn't miss games. So I think that he is the better choice for this team, even though I respect Calais Campbell a lot.
Justin, bring us home.
So believe it or not, I had the exact same two guys, Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward. They were both my interior guys. It has to do with flashiness, unfortunately. And I wish I could do more research to look into guys that were just really good at stopping the run, because unlike the Cleveland Browns, mantra, stopping the run is important. Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward, those are just my two guys.
They're both very good in the run game also.
Yeah.
I'd say the two of them and Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams might be like the premier run stuffing tackle in the division, but his presence.
I considered Brandon Williams.
His presence in the pass game just isn't there.
Surprisingly enough, actually, Ogunjobi was an unsung hero of the Browns defense, because of the tackles that were able to make some stops on the run, he was probably the one. Like Sheldon Richardson was great for making sacks, but unfortunately, not getting too much in the weeks. Browns.
Yeah. Hey, save it for the Tomahawk show, okay?
Yeah. Right.
So if you just allow me one moment here, because the Steelers don't make this team very often, just crown jewel and in the trenches, defensively, of course. No offense. Stephon Tuitt in Week 8 versus Baltimore, which was the game with the starters, 9 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and 2 sacks. His first tackle for a loss was Stephon Tuitt isn't so much power like Cam Hayward. It's more of a combination of power, speed, and agility for his size. So in his first tackle for a loss, he actually did a swim move on the right guard, who I think might have been DJ Fluker, but at the time I don't know. And he actually almost fell down because he didn't even make contact with Stephon Tuitt, who then uninterrupted in the backfield just tackled Gus for a 4-yard loss. So just like a great example of when Stephon Tuitt's really rolling, he's got this agility for his size that it's just kind of bonkers. And the other one was actually also a run play that I kind of highlighted. Lamar had a designed keeper up the middle later in the game, and they knocked Cam Hayward out of the play by having the center and the pull and the left tackle combo block Cam. And I think maybe the right guard got up on a linebacker, because if you look at the behind the quarterback view of the play, there's this huge hole and there's nobody behind the defensive line if Lamar gets through it. It looks like a classic 50-yard Lamar touchdown run. Stephon is engaged by the right guard, but he's able to manipulate his way across the line and disengage, and with one arm bring Lamar down before he gains 50 yards and 7 points. So it's just like a really good example of sure tackling when there's no one else to do it. And He's an excellent player, man. He's fun to watch, and he's one of the few Steelers that's actually under contract next year. So we get to look forward to seeing him some more.
All right, we will move to the edge gentleman of this defensive line that we're building. Unless anybody's got some crazy surprises, Chad, you can get us going, but it seems like this one is a pretty big duh.
Yeah, this one's going to be universal, I think. Myles Garrett is going to be one of the choices. He's a guy that I unfortunately don't have specific scripted moments to tell you the story of, but if you want, I would say check out the fourth quarter of any of the Browns' wins from week 1 to 6, and a turnover that he created basically is the reason they won. He made big time plays when they needed to happen all year. I was pretty critical of Myles Garrett earlier in the year. I think he balanced that out late in the year and into the playoffs, playing with injuries, only able to play snaps on really key downs and still winning his matchups. He's just like a bonkers physical anomaly in terms of speed and power off the edge. I think he could be one of the best run defenders in the game if he were a little more focused on it sometimes. But as a pure pass rusher, he's basically as good as it gets. And I say basically because he's not quite, because as good as it gets is TJ Watt, who is, I think, the only Steeler to have 14 plus sacks 3 years in a row. He led the league in sacks. I don't know his stats. He had 15. He's really, really good, everybody.
AP defensive player, the AFC defensive player of the year.
Oh, he got it?
He got it.
I thought it wasn't announced yet.
It was on Steelers Wire today, on USA Today.
Oh, wait. Just AFC, though.
Right.
So they haven't done
they'll announce
both.
the NFL one the night before the Super Bowl.
Okay. Yeah, because Aaron Donald is the big. I'll make a case for that on Facebook or something.
Yeah. So I actually earlier on in the year I was talking to somebody else who also happens to be a despicable, disgusting, unforgivable Steelers fan, and I was actually talking about how T.J. Watt makes the strong case for Defensive Player of the Year early on in the season. And we talked about it a little bit over text, and for a second I had a lapse of judgment where I'm watching that game against the Browns that I was like, man, TJ Watt, like he's just invisible. He barely even exists. But actually, if you looking over and getting the better judgment and more objective judgment ahead of myself, yeah, TJ Watt, and of course, like you said, Myles Garrett. I think one of my favorite parts of the season was when there was this 2.5 minute segment during, I think it was the Chiefs game, where they just looked at Myles Garrett's ankles for the game, and they kept talking about the cuts and the corners and the turns that he was able to make. Yeah, so obviously he's a big sack leader. He got snubbed a little bit because he missed a couple of games, so he unfortunately was not the sack leader of the NFL. But his QB pressures is something that you just can't overstate, which obviously Chad talked about a little bit. So, but yeah, pretty obvious.
All right. Yep. That's a clean sweep. TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. They're both really good.
Let me just talk about one play because it's unconventional TJ Watt. Everybody knows he can sack the quarterback, but one thing that teams seem to totally disregard this year consistently was his speed across the line of scrimmage, which is why he led the NFL in tackles behind the line of scrimmage by a wide margin. Teams would try to run away from him because it's not easy to block him, and they would do it, and they would pull their tackle and try and just run away from him and create a blocking advantage elsewhere. In Tennessee, week 7, he had 5 tackles, 3 for a loss, a sack, and a pass defense. And twice in this game, he got a tackle for a loss when the offense ran to their left and swept the whole offensive line left. And TJ just dives across the back side of the offensive line and wraps up the running back, in this case, Derrick Henry, who's very big, for a loss. He can just get across the line so fast and turn that corner so precisely that he doesn't only use that in the passing game. And so I just wanted to highlight that other part, that he's a really, really good run defender too. So just an all-around excellent player off the edge.
You know what's perfect about it too is that technically, I think he's slated as left and Myles Garrett is slated as right. So obviously they both change it up a little bit, but it works out.
Kismet.
All right.
You know what's beautiful about it is that no one said anything about Matt G, who doesn't belong in this conversation.
No, you know how I feel about
saying he
doesn't.
doesn't.
Move on.
I'm not gonna bring up that man. He may not be a Raven next year. Linebackers.
This is going to be interesting, I think.
We're gonna have two of them, and I think it's Justin's turn to get us going.
I don't know why, like, you guys keep picking, like, I swear to you, I'm not changing my fucking list. Like,
I'm just going in order. You want me to start it off?
I know.
You want me to start it off? I'll start it off.
Yeah, go ahead.
My two linebackers were Patrick Queen and B.J. Goodson. They were the two linebackers that led the division in tackles from those spots. That's what you want your linebackers to do. They're good young defenders. For long stretches of the season, B.J. Goodson was like the reliable linebacker for the Browns. I think he's very underrated. Justin likes to talk about the underdogs or the guys that are a little bit more unheralded. And I thought that B.J. Goodson was a fun nomination to make here for a guy that I don't think he led the Browns in tackles. A safety probably did that.
Yeah.
But he had over 100.
No, he didn't.
No?
He had
90-something?
91.
There you go. So, B.J. Goodson and Patrick Queen, he's a beast. Devin Bush getting hurt, in my opinion, made Patrick Queen the best middle linebacker in the division, which isn't saying a whole lot. And he definitely, especially early in the year, got exploited by some of the smarter offensive coordinators. But he's young and he's learning, and he makes up for a lot of his mental shortcomings as a young player right now with his athleticism and his speed and his reactivity. And he sacks a quarterback too. Chad? Oh, well, what just happened?
Is Justin still here?
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Are you guys still there?
Yeah.
We're still here.
Okay.
I will.
All right. Is my webcam active?
Negative.
All right. Well, go ahead while I troubleshoot. Oh, troubleshoot.
All right. I'm gonna.
Anyways.
Nice. Love that.
Well, that's
All right,
what happens
Justin.
when you have. Anyways. So I actually had Patrick Queen. He was my first shoe-in, and my second one was a complete coin flip between B.J. Goodson and, actually Taki. And the reason why is because Taki spent less time on the field than B.J. Goodson, but had a comparable amount of impact as B.J. Goodson. And here's the real story of the AFC North, is the fact that the linebackers were not very good this year. The linebackers were, in my opinion, not a shining star amongst the defenses that we were able to see this year. So that's why this one for me was such a complete coin flip. But yeah, I think overall I will pick B.J. Goodson. So yeah, B.J. Goodson and Patrick Queen.
What can I say? I'm a trendsetter. Chad?
You guys are so pathetic. You just.
Oh, you're
look
gonna
at
tell us how
tackles.
fucking Avery Williamson and fucking Robert Concrete Head Spillane.
They were equal to Patrick Queen. Like, honestly, they were equal to him. He was such a liability. If you look at the shallow statistics, Patrick Queen was the guy that you would pick because he had the most tackles and he had some splash plays. But every single time the Ravens had a bad game on defense, if you watch the game closely, and especially if you listen to film study, Patrick Queen, liability and coverage, Patrick Queen, misassignment, Patrick Queen, this. Yeah. The only reason He's like not even the best linebacker on the Ravens, in my opinion. Like he just
You're
got
gonna
the
say
most snaps.
LJ Ford is.
I'm going to say LJ Fort and Tyus Bowser were both better complementary players than him. They just got less
Hot take
snaps.
alert.
And I would have put Patrick Queen on this team ahead of Tyus Bowser, but I honestly looked at Tyus Bowser closely because he's so good in coverage. Patrick Queen is a total liability in coverage. But whatever. I mean, he's going to make the team because he has 2 votes. So I'm going to agree. BJ Goodson made my team as well. I called him Steady Eddie. He was just the guy. If you look at all of the linebackers we're talking about, they all have missed tackle percentages in the low teens, right? Like 14, 13, 12. I don't have Patrick Queen's handy because he didn't make my team, but it was in that same area. BJ Goodson was 5.2%. And I think that this was best displayed in the wild card game against the Steelers, in which he had 10 tackles but no splash plays. After Nick Chubb, he's the guy that I actually had the most plays for, that I thought highlighted what he did for the Browns. We spent all year talking about how this defense was a catastrophe when Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett weren't making splash plays. But the glue that was silently holding it together was BJ Goodson. I have one play in the wild card round where he forces Pouncey to engage a pass rush and then drops back into coverage and saves a big gain from Connor after Taki misses a tackle on a short catch. Second, he tracks Snell out of the backfield and saves a big gain after MJ Stewart missed a tackle. Third, he drops deep in the middle zone but rushes to save a first down on a dump off where Stewart misses an initial tackle. Even though he's a deep zone, he's the closest guy. He gets there first to save a first down. Another one, he lines up over center, again engaging Pouncey, but drops into a zone and makes a tackle on Deontay right after he gets a catch on a shallow crosser. Deontay Johnson's one of the hardest players to tackle in the division once he has the ball, and he made it look easy. And he also saved a longer pass to Juju late in the game where Juju stretched the zone on the sideline and he chased the play down and made the tackle when Mitchell, the safety, couldn't make it. Like, Goodson makes the play. And yeah, some of them were 10-yard gains. Some of them were 8. The Juju one was 30. But, like, he saved the points. So I love BJ Goodson on the Browns team. I hope they keep him. I think he's probably under contract. So, at least for the short term, not a big deal. So great choice by you guys. Great savvy watching of the division, because he's definitely not a guy the national media or anyone is going to pay a lot of attention to. Yeah. And I think that the second guy in my briefcase is Vince Williams. He's a smart player. He doesn't seem like he's good in coverage because he's not athletic, but actually his like QB rating in coverage is better than all the other players that we're talking about. He just doesn't get targeted that much. But when he does, it's short gains, and it's not a big deal for the most part. And he also was tied for league in tackles for a loss until he got injured in the middle of the season. He finished with 14, which is well ahead of anyone else that we're going to talk about, because he is an annihilator in the run game and on the blitz. You want to Patrick Queen is watching Vince Williams tape for learning how to time a blitz and crush running backs and sack quarterbacks from a middle linebacker position. He is a veteran that he doesn't have Queen's athleticism, but in my opinion, he's a much savvier player. And frankly, aside from not having quite as many tackles, he's the better player this year. But I will accept the loss. I'm not accepting the loss. Vince Williams is better. 14 tackles for loss. What was Patrick Queen doing with all that speed besides missing assignments?
I don't know. Tackling more than Vince Williams.
Missing more tackles. He's just around more. He's just running around.
Well, yeah. That's what you do when you're fast.
He's a joker.
You don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. So that's why he's not on my team.
Well,
because he doesn't know what's
on the
going
team,
on.
and so that's what matters. Moving on, we will do let's do corners next, and then we'll do slot, or we can combine them all in one. I think it's my turn to go first, anyways. I'll combine them all in one. My outside corners are Marlon Humphrey. Should be no fucking surprise there that I picked Marlon Humphrey. He's the best corner in the division. 1A to this next gentleman's 1B, Denzel Ward. He's fantastic cover corner. And my slot guy is the blitzman himself, Mike Hilton.
Who's next?
Gentlemen.
Chad.
Okay. This is going to get weird. My outside players are Denzel Ward, who I think just underappreciated for his physicality, both in coverage and in tackling, especially in tackling. I think he gets a raw deal on his tackling ability. I actually think it's well above average, especially for the position. Marcus Peters, he really needs no introduction. He intercepts the ball, and that's the best thing you can possibly do from his position. So he's my other outside guy, and I picked Marlon Humphrey as a slot cornerback because that's honestly where he takes tons of his reps for the Ravens. And even though Mike Hilton is technically a slot cornerback and was my second team choice, Marlon Humphrey is obviously a better player than him. I think he led the NFL in forced fumbles. The position versatility in a nickel scheme allows him to do everything. He did have a sack or two. He's just like, why would you blitz Marlon Humphrey? But he's certainly capable of it. So I picked Marlon Humphrey as my slot corner. But if it works out differently, Mike Hilton is to me the clear choice for second if Marlon is on the outside.
So I did not take into consideration position as much as you guys did. So I just picked what I felt was the top three corners. So I just picked Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, and Denzel Ward.
Yeah,
I think
that's fine.
Feels
Fair
pretty
enough.
clean sweep, if you ask me. I had nah, that's all right. I'll leave that to me and. Anyways, yeah,
God.
Marcus Peters, Marlon Humphrey, yeah, and Denzel Ward.
All right.
We'll just finish it there.
So we end with Denzel and Marcus Peters, the juice man on the outside, and Marlon Humphrey in the slot, in the slizzle. All right.
Great
We're
players.
going to move to...
Probably three of...
Yeah.
I was just going to say three of the top 5 or 7 corners in the whole NFL sitting right here in the AFC North. It's a really good position group and a lot of turnover. Joe Hayden was an all AFC North team last year, and it's not like he stunk this year. He just wasn't good enough to even be in the conversation.
Right.
Can't slip. No room for slipping.
This one was maybe my hardest one to pick outside of special teams. Strong safety. Justin?
Ugh. God damn it! Fuck.
Actually, I think it's Chad's turn to go first. Actually, because I went first on corners.
No, I'll take it. All right, I'll take it. All right. I nominate Andrew Sandejo. No, absolutely. I have some awesome stats on Andrew Sandejo, by the way. I can't wait. I hope we get an opportunity to talk about that later. But this was such like a big
Maybe
fucking
not tonight.
I actually picked Von Bell.
Hell yeah, Justin, let's
go.
So,
yeah, man, I fucking dug deep into.
You guys don't know anything about anything.
Strong safety, man. I don't think there was just defensive back, I guess safeties in general. Other than the obvious, there really wasn't a lot of strength in the division. So,
all right.
Strong safety specifically, yeah.
Von Bell had a respectable season for a quite bad defense. Chuck Clark's the best strong safety in this division.
you want to know who my P was?
You guys are so stupid.
You think
Okay,
Terrell
continue.
Edmonds is better than Chuck Clark?
Just make your fucking case.
Chuck Clark's the best. He calls the plays for the defense. He's the best
Holy
strong
crap,
safety
he talks.
in the division.
that.
It's not even close.
That's your case?
Yeah, who's calling plays for this all division team? It's not Patrick Queen.
It's BJ Goodson.
Well, it certainly could have been Vince Williams if you guys weren't idiots, but
Well,
that's true. It is
presuming
not Patrick.
presuming that the defensive coordinator of this team's Wink Martindale, since he's the best DC in the division, I think Chuck Clark is a natural fit. Who's your strong safety, Chad? Break our tie between Chuck Clark and Von Bell.
Yeah.
Bad news. Not going to break the tie. My strong safety, as you guys call it, I just played two safeties because having two deep safeties is in no way uncommon.
Oh, then,
So
then
I
we
just
just
picked
want
the
to turn
two-
this into safety? We can get rid of Chuck Clark. I will gladly get rid of Chuck Clark. You want to just do that?
I looked
two
at-
safeties? That makes it easy.
Let me finish.
Go
Let me
ahead.
finish. I did it because I looked at safeties that have a complete skill set, and I looked at the safeties that I thought were the best, and I thought, can those players play strong safety or free safety? And the answer is yes. So the strong safety is Minka Fitzpatrick. He plays a shallow robber position on the regular. His 79 tackles, 1 for a loss, 4 interceptions, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and a touchdown, and a quarterback rating of 65.7 when he's in coverage are awesome, which means he can play near the line of scrimmage. He can play away from the line of scrimmage. And therefore, he is an excellent candidate for, frankly, either safety position. But because he tends to sneak down into that robber position a lot, I chose him as my strong safety. And since we're leaning this direction, and I think I might win you guys over, my free safety is Jesse Bates, who was really the standout safety of the whole division this year, just watching the games. If you watch the Bengals run defense, you know that Jesse Bates can play strong safety because he had 109 tackles. So he's involved in everything. He had 2 tackles for a loss, so he's jumping into gaps. He's filling those kind of roles and dissecting screens. 3 interceptions, a forced fumble, and a QB rate of 70.7. Now, Jesse Bates plays a lot of single high safety, so that is why I chose him as my free safety, and I do have some fun plays to talk about if we want to, but that is my case for shedding this focus on definition and just accepting that if those 2 players are behind a defense, they're going to do the best thing every time.
I agree.
I think I can get behind
Minka
that.
and
Yeah.
Jesse Bates.
Yeah, that's much easier to get behind.
They're the 2 best flat-out safeties in the division, and they're both
Right.
versatile enough to play either spot.
Thank you guys for seeing reason.
You mean
If I was forced...
Yeah.
No, you guys saw, you guys making your own assessments of the players said that the same thing as me. You just looked at the debate in a different lens, which disgusted me initially, but I knew that we could get around it. And I'm proud of everyone here. You're all adults today.
For now.
For now.
For now. I just want to say that Chuck Clark was my 1C. But anyways, what's next? Special teams or something?
I mean, all right.
All
If
right.
you want to, we can.
Well, that's
Let's be
I-
quick. Let's.
yeah. So
Yeah, Jesse.
Thunder kicker. So kicker, pretty clear and easy. He still is like one of the best. He's one of the GOATs right now, as it stands. Justin Tucker. It is what it is. Call it as you will. My 1B, Cody Parkey, actually. I really was trying to make a case for this because Cody Parkey, double doink all you want. He actually had a really fucking good season. He had like 2 games that really like ruined his statistics because in those 2 games he missed like every field goal and every fucking kick. Other than those 2 games, though, he was like perfect. But anyways,
there were multiple times this year where Cody Parkey was a disaster, and it was like, yo, when this happens to the Browns in the playoffs, it's their fucking fault.
right.
So,
But there was like 14 games where he was like perfect. But I just wanted to have a fun disagreement, but we don't have enough time. So Justin Tucker, punter, I had no fucking clue. Jamie Gillian was garbage this year. I was actually kind of disappointed by it. The Scottish Hammer was much less than the Hammer. So after digging, I picked Kevin Huber.
I concur with Justin Tucker. I was gonna pick Kevin Huber because he had the highest yards per punt, but
Yeah.
I ended up picking Barry from the Steelers because despite having less punts than Kevin Huber, he obliterated him in inside the 20 punts. And so Jordan Berry, I think that's his first name, Jordan, right? Had the most punts in the division inside the 20, and that's what you want your punter to do.
I couldn't find that stat in the very small amount of time I was willing to engage in this. So I am going to not say what I wrote down and just agree with Joey and add another Steeler to the punter. Obviously, Justin Tucker was my pick for because he kicks it through the middle every single time from any amount of yards.
Almost every single time. Returners, I know Chad, Ray McLeod.
Did you do a kick returner and a punt returner?
I just said returner.
Yeah,
We can split them. We can split them if you want.
Ray McLeod is the obvious candidate for punt returner, but he was like third in the division in kick returning. So, I mean, if you need a guy to do both, he's the choice. But Devin Duvernay had a 97-yard touchdown kick return, and he averaged 27.5 yards per return, which is better than a touchback, which means that he's making good decisions. So I actually had Devin Duvernay as my kick returner.
Me too. Justin, any thoughts
I'm like really up.
Return guys?
My thoughts was a lack of thoughts. I didn't get that deep.
Okay. Chad, you were going to say something.
Yeah, it's killing me that the most fun position on defense, we didn't even talk about one play. You just got to let me do it. So Jesse Bates, week 8 versus Tennessee. I mean, he had 11 tackles, an interception, and 2 pass defenses. And I would love to walk you guys through all of that. But instead, I just want to talk about one play. The Bengals blitzed their slot corner, who was lined up against A.J. Brown, one of the hardest people to tackle in the NFL. Ryan Tannehill's not an idiot, so he threw the ball to A.J. Brown immediately, who was completely uncovered. On this play, Jesse Bates was a single high safety, 15 yards away from the line of scrimmage in the middle of the field. He tracks his play so fast that he is able to meet A.J. Brown and tackle him for a 6-yard gain. That's Jesse Bates' involvement in every play all the time. He is a homing missile of excellent, entertaining destruction. One play for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it's not even going to be the interception on Baker Mayfield to a blowout in one of my happiest moments of the season. This is against Baltimore in week 8. This play, I didn't even notice it because it was all we discussed was Cam Hayward's unnecessary roughness on Lamar Jackson after a run on the sideline when he was actually still in bounds, but they called unnecessary roughness as if he wasn't. But what's best about this play is that Minkah starts off in deep center field as a single high safety. He jumps Mark Andrews' long curl route, which is what leads Lamar to actually run to the outside. Minkah tracks him, and after Tuitt dives and misses Lamar, Minkah is able to corral Lamar out of bounds for a 1-yard gain after starting in deep center field and cutting off Lamar's initial read to Mark Andrews. So just a great display of range, versatility, and playmaking from both of those players. And I couldn't go on without talking about safeties. They're the playmakers. So I'm sorry to go backwards, but it was eating me up inside. I wasn't going to sleep tonight.
Well, I'm glad you were able to get that out.
Hey,
Thank
speaking
you.
of safeties, Andrew Sendejo gave the second highest passer rating in the NFL against him. 144 was the passer rating against Sendejo.
Oh my
So
God.
yeah, I don't even know what I thought. Isn't that
Yowza.
like over the maximum? I don't even know, right? But
The
153.
158.3 is the
yeah,
max. The guy, do you have him in front of you? Do you have the stats in front of you?
yeah, Antoine Winfield Jr. from Tampa Bay.
Oof. I was gonna say it would have been funny if the
Oh,
guy in that stinks. Uh, we had a very high opinion of him in our pre-draft coverage, and
still do.
I feel like he's highly
No, he's
regarded.
been good.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe he just hasn't been. I don't know. He's
yeah.
been good. I mean, he's tackling. They
He had
speak
fewer
well for him.
targets. I mean, I don't know. He had an interception though. Sendejo had 0 interceptions. So there's that. He Sendejo also had tied for second place for most touchdowns on target. But he was not the most targeted. I don't know why. I could be a
Yeah.
defensive coordinator at this fucking point, right? So target that guy. Sorry.
All right, you ready to give out some end of year awards and get the hell out of here? Classic 2-hour AFC Northcast.
Dude, it's the all AFC North team. This might be the most fun episode of the year.
All right.
And yes, I'm ready. I'm ready, and I have no stats to back up my choices for any of this. I ran
I
out
was
of
not
time.
prepared for this.
I have very little stats considering my normal mode of operation. All right, Chad. Well, get us kicked off here with Offensive Rookie of the Year.
I'm taking Joe Burrow.
Oh,
Despite the fact that he only played half the season, I think he changed the dynamic of a lost franchise. And I think he played so well that he actually guided the coaching staff into how to develop the offense as he played week to week. His deep ball needs work, but he had the Cincinnati freaking Bengals scoring 30 points a game with no training camp, no anything at all. And he's just really fun. And I think we're all excited to see him come back healthy next year. So he is my offensive rookie of the year, despite not playing the whole season.
All right. Justin?
yeah. I was about to say, actually, the first thing that came to mind, because I was not prepared for this, was actually one of your guys, Chad. But once you said Joe Burrow, I forgot. I mean, he only played half the season or whatever. But he was
10, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he was quite the spectacle in the time that he did have, with basically an inept offensive line, as always with the Bengals for whatever reason. So yeah, I think I'll piggyback that.
All right. And this just magnifies the bright future that the Bengals potentially have. I'm going T. Higgins. Justin hinted at Chase Claypool. I think he's a worthy mention for this award. He led the division, as Chad mentioned earlier, in receiving touchdowns this year, I believe. So
Mapletron.
that's great. He's got more guys there to be taking attention away, and after T. Higgins emerged, and he's got Ryan Finley and fucking whichever Allen was backing him up, throwing to him, and to still be able to put up the numbers that he put up, I think was very commendable. So I'm gonna throw T. Higgins' name in there in defeat, and
It's good that you
Joe
did.
B,
He played.
congratulations to Big Dick Burrow, Offensive Rookie of the Year. All right, Justin, Defensive Rookie of the Year.
So I think based off of our all AFC North cast picks, it's going to have to be Patrick Queen, right? I mean,
Yeah, even
would it
after
have to
Chad
be anybody else?
eviscerated him. He's my pick too.
And for the record, I eviscerate fairly, and I think that Patrick Queen was the standout defensive rookie of the AFC North, and I think that he did make plays. He did use his athleticism to do a lot. I had his stats pulled up before. I think he had a touchdown. He had a number of forced fumble and fumble recoveries. He had a couple sacks. He had a bunch of tackles. So, yeah, I think he's got a really, really bright future. And I think in terms of just rookies getting snaps, he's like by far the leader. So just the fact that he was on the field and representing himself that way the most is a big factor. So yeah, I think Patrick Queen is a worthy defensive rookie of the year candidate.
All right.
And winner.
I am going to kick off defensive player of the year because then I'm going to let Chad and Justin battle to the death. Actually, maybe I should break the tie last.
Probably.
Chad, who's your defensive player of the year?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's TJ Watt. He led the league in sacks. He led the league by 1 million in tackles for a loss. He led the league in pass rush win percentage. He didn't play the whole season. He could have won the league by more. He's just really, really good. I'm not saying he is the all-time best player at his position. I think that's going to be a great battle for years to come, probably with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett finished 3 sacks behind TJ Watt, so could he have gotten that in one more game? Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think TJ Watt wins it this year.
But here's my question. Could TJ Watt have done it battling the deadly, the overwhelming pandemic that is COVID-19 that Myles Garrett pushed through, all right, at the behest of his health and safety, all right? I'm just saying Myles Garrett did more in fewer games. That's my line. That's where it ends.
Yeah, it's
Joey?
It's TJ Watt.
I had to state a case. I mean,
I know.
to make it happen.
You have to. You have to.
I'm glad you did. I mean, honestly, like Myles Garrett had a great season.
He did, and he actually. So in his defense, and I'll continue. He had multiple conferences where he said that he actually like was getting winded quicker than normal. He just wasn't at 100% when he was back and returning playing for multiple games. But anyways, yeah, TJ Watt it is.
To Myles Garrett's credit, 4% missed tackle rate. So if he just worked harder to get to the running back sometimes when he's being a little bit lazy, he probably would be really, really excellent at that. I think he's a little bit lazy tracking the run.
My lazy Browns.
Nope, just one lazy player.
Just one lazy Brown.
Just lost him defensive player of the year. It's not a big deal.
Justin?
Offensive player of the year?
Well, I thought we weren't doing that because you said the MVP was the offensive player of the year.
Oh, you told me your MVP was going to be a defensive player.
I said it could be. You don't know me.
All right. I don't even have an MVP. I forgot to write it down.
We'll just do your offensive player of the year.
Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
This is going to make me look really bad. My offensive player of the year is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it is.
Because I think he's the most exciting player to watch, even though I chose Ben Roethlisberger as the all AFC North quarterback. I think that when you're just saying offensive player of the year, like you're like, who's the guy that can just do it in a moment? And it's Lamar. I mean, Lamar from the 50, if he runs up the middle, it's a touchdown. Lamar, yeah, he might need his receivers college open to throw a deep touchdown, but they can get college open because everybody thinks he's going to run the ball. So that's fine. He can do that. He can throw. I just think he's really got that excitement level that's generationally special. And I think that even though that's not a statistic you can measure, it's one that I put as probably my number one defining factor for this type of thing. So I picked Lamar as the offensive player of the year.
Yep, I did too.
I'm going to go total dark horse on this, like complete dark horse, because obviously there's no way I can win this one based off of, this thing called math. But I'm going to say Kareem Hunt, as a matter of fact. He runs it, he catches it, all right? Total yards, he was only something like 50 or 60 yards behind Nick Chubb, who was my initial instinctual offensive player of the year. And he pulled the team through a rut when Nick Chubb wasn't able to be there. He can do it both. He can do it all. And I just want to give him some love since I obviously can't win this one. So
we'll give Kareem Hunt the nice little player award.
There you go.
I am now capable of picking an MVP. I realized I had it.
Okay.
If need be.
Coach of the year, I don't think a whole lot needs to be said. We've talked, well, I don't know what Chad's going to say, basically. I
didn't think about it.
I know what it's Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I mean, he already won it, didn't he?
We haven't even talked about it yet, Justin.
Well, I was going to say, based on, like, AP and all that shit, right? But, Kevin Stefanski, clear and obvious. I mean, he's turned the team around, and he started to actually fit the team towards a scheme that they're actually best suited for, which is like the first time in the past, 20 fucking years. Like, I'm just sick and tired of these old whites coming through and being all like, hey, this is my scheme, this is how I like to play football, and this is what we're going to do. And finally, they found a coach that has a mindset that's able to say, hey, this is what works best based off of the players we have, and let's turn this fucking shit show around. And he did it.
Chad, do you have any
Agreed.
arguments?
Nah, as a Steeler fan, I have tended to argue away from firing coaches, and I was nervous about that for the Browns over the last few years. But I think they made the right choice, and I really liked what Kevin Stefanski did. So great job.
All right, and I'll
great
start
job,
off
Kev.
MVP. My most valuable player of the AFC North is Lamar Jackson. I think it's easy, especially given that we've given an offensive player of the year. I think a lot of times MVP turns into like most outstanding player. We've already talked about Lamar's setbacks as a passer, but I think on any team as currently constructed in the division, Lamar is the most valuable player to any one team.
I have a feeling that Justin is going to agree with you, so I'd like to go next.
Go ahead.
Before it's over. This is where I cycle back to Ben Roethlisberger. The Steelers were 8-8 last year, despite the defense playing astronomically better than it even did this year. And this year, with Ben playing at his peak, they started 11-0. And the difference between his peak and his valleys was basically what we saw at the end of the season in their ugly losses. So it's a tricky, balanced line to walk, but I would say you can see how important Ben is to the Steelers playing well in their results. When he isn't himself or at his best abilities, their team is a loser. Like, they are losers. And when he's playing at his best, they look like a legitimate contender for the Super Bowl, although maybe not a favorite. So even though he is not the most outstanding moment-to-moment offensive player, I think because of the Steelers' lack of run game, there isn't a more important player to the team's success than Ben Roethlisberger in the AFC North.
You think the Ravens are only 4 wins worse without Lamar Jackson?
I think that even you on the right day make the case that Trace McSorley could win the division for the Baltimore Ravens with their running game. I honestly do, because of their running scheme.
Yeah, so obviously I have to split the tie, and I can't. I just have to split the tie, right? And I'm going to actually side with Chad on this one. And the reason why is something that I've said for a long time. When people talk about some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and I'm not saying Ben Roethlisberger is the greatest quarterback of all time, but when they talk about some of them, right, something that you see is the idea that you have quarterbacks that you can kind of swap out and install, and teams are still successful. When the Pittsburgh Steelers play without Ben Roethlisberger,
They're 8-8.
basically garbage because
They're
of their
8-8.
defense.
They're better than the Browns when they don't
Because of
play
their defense,
with Ben
not because of
Roethlisberger.
what their offense is capable of doing, right? Like, so that's why I would say Ben Roethlisberger. And first off, 8-8, that was by far an anomaly. We've seen in years past how they were much worse without Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh, you think so? Because the Steelers love to fucking jay off
love the
Mike Tomlin
wildcat
about
because
not having
fucking
losing seasons. So
Michael
no, they
Vick
haven't been
can't
way worse
possibly
without
throw a
Ben
football,
Roethlisberger.
right? So they have to wildcat for fucking 2 whole games, right?
That's true. That's true. They had to wildcat against Cincinnati to squeak out a win last year. It was crazy. Look, Joey, we all think Lamar Jackson's a cool guy. He signed
Ben Roethlisberger, 5-yard passes, is the most valuable player in the division.
All I have to
Mr.
say is
Get the ball
that's how
out
I
in
win
2
matches.
seconds. That's the most valuable set of skills in the division. Is throwing the ball in 2 seconds to short slants.
I
the
mean,
biggest difference between a win and a loss is him in the division.
look, 5 yards
Is
per attempt. That's a first down
Ben.
every time, guys.
Please.
Every 4 downs, it's a first down. All right, so.
Please. This shit's right.
Look, we all love Lamar is the MVP of signing autographs for other teams' fans.
Look, man, the Ravens
Love that.
had a positive record before Lamar Jackson, and they have a positive record with Lamar Jackson. So when you're talking about installing a player and removing a player, I mean, I guess you could make a case for Baker Mayfield at that point, but I mean, I don't know.
Stupidity is just washing upon me in waves. All right, everybody. We hope you enjoyed that marathon podcast, 2+ hours of raw, unadulterated AFC Northness. And we will be back sometime before the draft to discuss off-season things and moves. We may do like a free agency thing at some point before the draft even. Once the
let's do 2.
The NFL off-season kind of takes hold here. So we will see everybody soon. We're not going anywhere. Enjoy the Super Bowl. First ever Super Bowl matchup of 2 quarterbacks that are former league MVPs and former Super Bowl MVPs. How cool is that?
And the first time a team is playing at home field.
That's
for
right.
the Super Bowl.
And of course, it's fucking Tom Brady.
Yeah.
What a douche.
Motherfucker.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, everybody.
Hate
We'll
'em.
see you soon.